Good morning, everyone. Thank you and welcome here and welcome everyone on Zoom. Thank you. This is our regular Tibetan Buddhist Society Canberra Sunday morning calm abiding meditation followed by Dharma talk. I'm glad you can all make your time. So be present and in your posture, your awareness, your concentration, your mindfulness, your intention, and the instructions how to stay very present and calm and serenely aware of your conscious mind, unclouded by discursivity and agitation and dullness. Even if they are, when you're aware of them, they don't really last, do they? It's only when they don't, we are not aware, they tend to take you over. So you should, when you're calm, they generally pacify themselves. So we'll first do the regular reminder of our refuge in the Triple Gem and intention to do this practice for the benefit of not now or me or my body, but for future and my mind stream and for others, and for the perfect attainment of highest goal that one can possibly seek, called Buddhahood, for the benefit of all. So with this intention we will do the refuge and for immeasurables. O in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha Adara Vyada Ladama Bhavacha Ajandala Ajara Adavatu Endabu Dadama Sangha Ajara Vyada Ladama Bhavacha Ajandala Ashara Adavatu Endabu Dadama Sangha Adara Vyadaladama Bhavacha Ajandala Ashara Adavatu. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and may all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and cause of suffering. May they never part from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and may all beings happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Okay, now we'll do the meditation in 3 slots. Principally, you focus your object of your attention, be that posture, be that qualify round counting of forward or super qualify round reverse counting, or whatever awareness of bodhicitta, or emptiness, or impermanence, or law of interdependent origination, or qualities of Buddha, or demerits of desire, or attachment, or ill will, whatever you seek to focus, you try to observe the 4S, stillness of your posture, and sincerity of your intention, and serenity of your attention, and then simplicity of technique. Stay really one-pointed in the very chosen object. One-pointedly, devoid, if possible, of dullness and discursive thoughts. But if they do occur, try to recognize them for they are, but don't react to them, because they are not really themselves. They're just what your mind is at the moment, and which by nature changes. So stay calm. They really haven't got a life on its own unless you react to it. And stay calm, and you will regain your ground. And that's introspection and mindfulness in use. Thank you, everyone, with the meditation. Of course, you are most welcome to stay in that state of calm, abiding, and serene state. But object of that could be my talk on here. The subject today is continuation of the topic of Buddhism before Nalanda Panditas. We have the assumption that we are follower of Nalanda Panditas, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when did Nalanda Panditas and their legacy started? Is that referring to the time of the Buddha or not? So the answer is not. Nalanda Pandita, even the earliest one, is Nagarjuna. And that's only 2nd century AD. So therefore the topic here aims to fill the gap that they think, people think that there isn't a gap. Directly from Buddha goes to Nalanda Pandita. Buddha is 500 BC and Nalanda Pandita is 200 AD. So that's 700 years. And this seems to is fairly unfair gap to be forgotten. Any gap is should be filled, whether it's laying floor or whatever. You have to fill the grounds. So 700 years of gap should be filled, and there is a very important. If we don't do that, why there is a division of us versus them? It comes because of not being able to fill the gap. So I'm going through the early history of Buddhism, written by Taranatha, very celebrated Tibetan monk in 17th century. So it's quite late, really. It seems there are no Tibetans who wrote reliable history of Buddhism in India. But his actually goes in great depth in terms of the sources and so on. So I'm going to continue where we left last week. Now we have to really, when we talk about the Buddhism before Nalanda Panditas, we have to think of places and kings and monastics and leaders. If we can identify the major learning centers, teachers, kings who supported them, then we are able to piece together historically. So that's exactly what Taranatha seeks to do. In Tibetan Buddhism, generally they tend to say there were so-called 7 patriarchs after the Buddha. And they all recognize them by very brief mention of who these 7 patriarchs are. And then as if after that everything was Nagarjuna's work. So I like to look a bit more closely that it leaves a huge gap of a couple of hundred years. No matter how mysterious and mystical some figures like Nagarjuna may have been, by all agreed accounts, Nagarjuna is no earlier than 2nd century AD. So therefore, the teaching that he received, and he became great. He wrote commentaries on the Middle Way philosophy, and some people think his writing is the root text of Middle Way. But I would like to dispute that can't be, because the Middle Way is the teaching of the Buddha. So what are we trying to say? What did Buddha teach if the Middle Way is taught only by Nagarjuna and his followers and Nalanda Panditas? What is the teaching of the Buddha? We have noticed that the first 3 patriarchs whose names we have gone through, that is Venerable Mahakashyapa, that's the successor to the Buddha, who who was the preceptor over the first council of Buddhism that was held probably a couple of months after Buddha's passed away, at the sponsorship of King Ajatasattu in Rajagriha. So there he was unanimously appointed as the leader of the Sangha, as first patriarch. That is Mahakashyapa, and then second is Ananda. So, and during that first council, they appointed three of the arhats who were the compiler of the Buddhist teaching called Tripitaka. Tripitakas contains three collections. Collection of Vinaya Pitaka. Mainly, Vinaya Pitaka largely contains code of ethics of monastics. But actually, when you really read all the 13 volumes of Vinaya, only 2 volumes will cover that code of ethics. Rest is all history, past lives of the Buddha, and Buddha was telling stories. So Vinaya books should not be treated merely as a list of codes of monastics. It actually is full of legends and history of Buddhism and past lives of Buddha and all the Shakya kingdom. Anyway, so Vinaya Pitaka is that, and the second is Sutra Pitaka. Sutra is the discourses given by the Buddha. Of course, all things are given by discourses, but this is Sutra Pitaka is compiled by Ananda. And then we have the Abhidhamma Pitaka was compiled by Mahakashyapa, and sorry, I forgot to say that Vinaya Pitaka was compiled by Upali. So what's interesting thing is that out of those 3 compilers of the 3 baskets, the first 2 are first patriarchs, that is Mahakashyapa and Ananda. Ananda was Buddha's cousin and attendant. Nobody expected him to be that important, but later on he was the second successor to the Buddha. But we do not know what happened of Upali. The Upali is the barber who compiled all the Vinaya texts, but he doesn't feature as a patriarch. So what is going on here? The other 2 are, because Mahakashyapa and Ananda are. Why? Mahakashyapa was very senior, very regarded, and Ananda is Buddha's cousin and also attendant for many years. Is it because Upali was ex-barber that he doesn't get recognized? So there is a bit of a question. I have seen some Buddhist scholars also, modern scholars also raise there's no important role mentioned of Upali except compiling the Vinaya, but they don't say what kind of upkeep of the Dharma did he do. Anyway, he doesn't feature as one of the successors, let alone as a Nalanda Pandita. Can you give us think about that? So anyway, I wanted to make sure that all these names you don't forget, as I try not to forget, because these are the real people who played huge roles. Anyway, so last week we talked about how Ananda, after attaining his own enlightenment, became so instrumental in not only planting Dharma seeds in many people's mind, but causing the arhathood of hundreds of thousands of people. And then King Ajatasattu was so astonished that the former attendant of Buddha has become so powerful in not only his attainment of arhathood, but also causing thousands and thousands of other people. So therefore, King Ajatasattu became even more devoted, so on. So let me not need to repeat that. Then he was succeeded. Ananda was succeeded by Shanavasin. He has two main disciples, Shanavasin and what we call Madantika. Shanavasan, when we think of Shanavasan, think of Kashmir. When you think of Madhyantika, think of the time he got attainment. That's midday. He attained Arat in the midday. That's why he earned the name, title Madhyantika. Madhyantika means a midday master. so, 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 so don't always think that you should wait for the dawn to gain enlightenment. There is a magic moment. There are 4 magic moments, and dawn, dusk, midday, midnight. so he attained at the midday. So Madhyantika is not also, like Upali, not mentioned as one of the 7 patriarchs. But Madhyantika was very, very influential in terms of assisting his teacher Shanavasan. Shanavasan, when you think of Shanavasan, he's the 3rd official patriarch. He is Ananda's disciples. Ananda himself, remember, attained arhathood and taught, and then passed away in Nirvana on the island in the Ganges. In the big Ganges River had parted in 2 ways. In the middle of the 2 parting Ganges, there he created an island, and he passed away there. And there he taught to Shanavasan. So when you think about Mahakashyapa as the 1st patriarch, think of Rajgriha, okay? When you think of Ananda, the 2nd patriarch, think of Vaishali. Vaishali is where you will see the big remnants of the stupa, or Ananda stupa. That's because that is the way all his devotees mainly were from the Litsavis. The Litsavi people are the resident of Vaishali. It's one of the biggest cities in India those days. And Ananda being Buddha's cousin and the successor, one of the successors, it became a very important seat. And whereas Venerable Shanavasan and Madhyantika, you should think of Kashmir. Kashmir is the place where Ananda predicted to Shanavasan that he should go to Kashmir where Dharma will flourish. So we're talking about moving northwest. From Magadha, they move northwest, because Magadha to Vaishali is Vaishali also northwest, and from that even more northwest is Kashmir. So that's what we cover so far. Today we will cover the Madhyantika is not considered as a official patriarch, but actually his name features very important. Some Tibetan history books mistakenly think Madhyantika and Shanavasan are same identity but different names. But that's because they haven't really read that these are two individuals. Anyway, now the disciple of Shanavasan, or successive Shanavasan, the 4th patriarch, is Upagupta. Upagupta was the son of an incense seller. In India, when they talk about someone's background, they talk about all their professions, whether they were Brahmins, whether they were these, Upali is the barber, someone is someone's relative, or someone is a resident of this town or that, or what he did for make a living, So Upali is the incense seller. So the smell and color is a big thing in India. So he was an incense seller. Anyway, after he heard the Dharma, within a week he attained arhathood under the guidance of none other than Shanavasan. Now because Upagupta has achieved arhathood very soon, within 1 week, he became very, very influential. And then he moved from, because he also received teaching from Shanavasan down in mainland, but he moved and his seat was formed in Mathura. So when you think of Upagupta, think of Mathura. Mathura is not far from modern Delhi. Yeah. So maybe in those days there was no Delhi, There was only Mathura. Today there is Delhi and Mathura, but Mathura is a more like old ancient city. But these days Delhi features as a man. So, but you can still find quite a lot of historical archaeological remnants in Mathura. Anyway, he resided in Mathura. On the western side of the Tirahuti River. There he resided in a monastery built by a householder called Vasusara, who was entertaining the Sangha. The Dharma has already flourished there, so the very wealthy, we can call landlord, has built a place, monastery, and many hundreds of monks. And the Venerable Upagupta he always spent the rainy season retreat, Those days, all the patriarchs, being very devout monk, they always make sure where they spend the rainy season retreat, So Upagupta spent. So when we talk about Shanavasan spending time in Kashmir, that means he spent most of his rainy season retreat in Kashmir. Maybe they travel elsewhere, but where they are mostly teaching during the rainy season retreat is where that's their seat is considered. So therefore, Upagupta was teaching during the whole 3 months. Each time he led the Varsa or rainy season retreat, and thousands and thousands of disciples attend Aratut. Then also he went to in the Gandhara Mountains, maybe it's northwest towards the modern Pakistan. He went there and led many people to see the truth by preaching the doctrine. And then, so he became very, very famous, and people would attract from many parts of India and come to him. Two of those big merchants who became his disciples are known as Nata and Banta, and they have both praised about the Venerable Upagupta's teaching and how they both went to see and receive his teachings. When they went to first time when they go to see Upagupta, when they saw him coming, they said, "Oh, someone is coming from there." They didn't know he was Upagupta. They said, "Oh, he must be someone special. He may be a disciple of Upagupta or something," because they heard so much about him. They say, "Oh, look at him. Looks so well controlled, brilliant, and well mannered. Must be either Upagupta or his successor, his disciples." Saying this to each other, they moved towards him then and bow down before him and ask about how he is, and so exchange the courtesy, and they discover he is the Upagupta. Upagupta said, "Oh, that's what I'm known in the world by name." He said, yes, people call me that name." And so they, being very wealthy merchant, they offered Nata Bhattika Vihara, very big monastery for him on a mountain called Mount Sira. And then they completely refurnished that monastery. And when they met Upagupta, they couldn't believe their eyes, how fortunate they are to see the enlightened one himself. In those days, the patriarch or the successor Buddha was regarded as the Buddha. As the Buddha. And these are those days, the arhats showing miracles and giving one sermon and people gaining arhathood is in 2000s. We are not talking about people listening to teaching and still not sure. It's not like that because of the holiness of those monks' vows, purity, discipline, pure renunciation. They were completely living by the 253 vows, precepts. These days, you could see how difficult it is, how few of them are observed because of, I would say, a degeneration or lack of following the tradition. Everything become more loose. Anyway, those days, they definitely were attaining those realizations through the purity and discipline and faith and basically the three Tripitaka practices, the self-discipline, you know. We'll talk about maybe next week about how difficult it was for any of those fundamental vows to be modified. Even people talk about modifying, suggesting they will receive a big rebuke from everyone. So people were really, really strict in guarding those precepts, like as dear as their eyes, they call it. And so therefore attainment of arhathood was mainly totally hinges on one's purity and discipline and meditation. Anyway, so on another occasion, Venerable Upagupta was preaching the doctrine to several lakhs of people, 100,000 people. So, those days, those arhats, he was already arhat, so there's he doesn't need a PA system, hearing loops, all those sorts of things. Everybody could hear as however far he is. The radiance and kind of what you call range of his wisdom and voice projection and goodness was so vast, 100,000. We talk about stadium full of 70,000, still nobody, even 100 people near us wouldn't hear unless you have a ear audio these days. Those days, they never had such things. He would be teaching lakhs of people, and he would, most of them were ripe enough to attain arhathood. And so when he was giving this teaching and lakhs of people were attending, the Maras, those Maras, those time was just as ripe, Maras can't stand in his success. So they would cause magical shower of rice in a city, just the rice. You don't have to harvest anything, just rice pouring. And these made people, the villagers are quite poor, so they went to collect the rice. They were distracted from his teaching. They went to collect his rice, and then they would go to listen to the teaching, and they would say, "Oh wow, who's this rice? Where's this rice coming from?" And then the Maras were therefore wanting to distract him. But people went to get rice, but how much rice you want to get anyways? And then they went back to the teaching. But on another day, they showered clothes. The Maharaj showered clothes, You don't have to go to Myers or any of the clothing shops when you just... More people that went to just get clothes, So less and less people want to stay in the teachings. In the same way, they showered silvers and gold and third and fourth day, like successively. A number of people attending to Upagupta's teaching were reduced to insignificance. On the sixth day, the Mara himself assumed the form of a celestial dancer. And his wife and his sons and daughters all appeared as a celestial, beautiful singers and dancers, acrobatic, and they entered into the city, 36 of them, all in the guise of the celestial actors, celestial actors. And they played incredible orchestra of music, and there was nobody left to attend Upagupta's teachings because everybody went to this free food and free drinks and free clothes and all the freebies coming everywhere, and including all these incredible celestial attainments. Then Upagupta himself went where all these things was happening. This is like he went there, and when he went to there, as soon as he arrived, the Lord Mara said, the foremost one, how wonderful is your performance. No, it's Upagupta talking to the head of the god, the demons who are performing this. He praised them. He says, I have garlands to offer you. He says, I come to offer, like in our situation, kathas to you. Wonderful. Thus saying, he put garlands on the heads and the necks of all of the celestial dancers. And then as soon as he finished putting those garlands on her neck, by the miraculous power of Arya, the bodies of the celestial dancers and associates immediately turned into aged, decayed, ugly ones. And they're all wearing tattered clothes with decomposed corpses on their heads and rotten dead dogs hanging over their necks. The stink was so bad that nobody stayed near the spectacle. Everybody ran away. What previously they were applauding and enjoying, that's become completely impossible to stay. It turned the whole scene into a nauseating experience. The people who were there to be free from passion covered with their noses and turned back with anger and fear and disgust. What the hell, this? So they were so disgusted. Then Upagupta asked to the Mara, why did you harm my followers to be distracted by your mundane worldly offers? And then the Mara said, forgive me, please, O Arya, and free us from our fetters. So he was quick, he was quick. Upagupta said, I shall do this if you do not try to harm my followers and distract from the holy Dharma. I shall do no harm even though I perish. So the Mara said. Immediately Mara's body resumed its usual form. He said, I caused injuries with all my power to Gautama while he was in Bodh Gaya. Yet he remained undisturbed in his meditation and compassion. But in spite of being the follower of Gautama, you are violent and aggressive. You have put us under fetters as soon as we tried the slightest joke. You made us turn into such a terrible thing. You are unlike Gautama. Gautama's compassion, he just completely tolerated. He didn't do anything. Then Upagupta, preaching the doctrine even to the evil Mara, said, I had vision only of the Dharmakaya of the teacher, but I never saw him in the Rupakaya. You, however, have seen him, O evil one. Therefore, show me his physical form. I said, I haven't seen the Buddha in physical form, and I see him only in Dharmakaya form. So you actually saw him. Please show me. When the Mara assumed the physical form of the teacher, Mara was able to, he completely turned into the Buddha. Arya Upagupta became full of profound reverence. His hair stood on end in ecstasy. His eyes were full of tears. He placed his folded hands on his head and said, I bow to the Buddha. As unable to bear this, the evil one fell down unconscious and then vanished. So this is the stories. Maybe this kind of mysterious stories didn't go very well to the modern Buddhists or to the Nalanda Panditas. They rather want to use the maybe intellectual prowess to debating and so on, not showing miracles and so on. I don't know. So this is come. So thus was born a great reverence in all the people who, as a result of merit of the past karma, assembled there from all directions. As a consequence of his preaching the doctrine throughout the 6th night, beginning from that of showering of the rice, 18 lakhs of people led to the realization of the truth on the 7th day. 18 lakh people attained Arahut. Upagupta spent the rest of his life in Narabhatika monastery. There was a cave there, 18 cubits. This is his real story. 18 cubits in length, 12 in breadth, and 6 in height. Each of the ordained monks who attained arhathood by virtue of his preaching used to throw one wooden chip 4 inches long into the cave. So everyone when attained arhathood, they throw a stick there. It was such a deep cave. In this way, the cave was so filled up with such wood chips that no passage remained. And sometime when Arya Upagupta attained the parinirvana, that's after he passed away, his body was cremated with this. His body was cremated by all the 6 people through that. Yeah. His relics were collected together, and it said it was taken away by gods. The teacher himself had predicted that Upagupta was a Buddha to be without Lakshana. So he will be born as a Buddha without the distinctive features or like the 32 marks. This means that though without Lakshana and of the Buddha, he was similar to the Buddha in his compassion for all living beings. After nirvana of the Tathagata, nobody surpassed him in compassion for all living beings. The period during Upagupta served as law was mainly the period 9 years rule over most of the regions of Upper Parantaka by King Mahendra. King Mahendra is great-great-grandson of Ajatasattu. So you've got to always go by which king, which teacher. And the period of 22 years ruled by Mahendra's son Chamasa. So that's the grandson or great-grandson of Ajatasattu. Now, at that time, there lived a great arhat named Uttara. King Mahendra had great reverence for him. The people of Bhagata built for him a monastery in the region of Kukutapala and offer it to him. Kukutapala is near Bodh Gaya. Some people think the Kukutapala is the place where Asanga in 4th century meditated 12 years. Meditated. As a result of his many sermons to numerous people belonging to the 4 classes of people, Aparatanka, large number of them were led to the 4 stages of perfection. This refers to the 4 stages of arhathood. His foremost disciple is Arhat Yasha. Shortly after King Chamasha had ascended the throne, after the death of King Mahendra, there lived in Magadha a Brahmin woman called Jahasha, who was then about 120 years old. She had 3 sons called Jaya, Sujaya, and Kalyana. First of them was the worship of God Mahadeva. Second is that of Kapila. Third is Samyak Sambuddha. So these 3 brothers who followed different teachers. They studied their respective doctrine thoroughly and used to argue among themselves every day in the same house. The mother once said, "I provide you with food, clothing, leaving you with nothing more to want. Why then do you always argue?" They replied, "We do not argue for the sake of food, mother. What we argue about are right teacher and the right doctrine." Their mother said, "If you fail to discriminate with your own intellect between the right and wrong teacher or doctrine, better ask other scholars about these." Obeying the mother, 3 brothers went about in many places, made inquiries. They failed to find anybody who would convince them. At last they came to Arhat Uttara, and each of them placed his views elaborately before him. Jaya and Sujaya, the 2 elder brothers, first narrated how Mahadeva was praised for destroying Tripura and how Kapila had terrible power of cursing. But the Shramana, the youngest one, Gautama could not curse, and therefore it was obvious that his penance was fruitless. He could not overpower the Asura, and hence his might was limited. To this the Arhat replied, "What does penance mean to one who allows the mind to be agitated or with anger or leads to curse others? Even the evil, immoral, and violent Dakinis, Rakshas, can curse. It is extremely foolish to try to kill those who, even without being killed, chained, or beaten, are inevitably going to die. That is like a stupid person who threatens the setting sun with his stick and boasts that he has driven it away." Listen further, O Brahmanas. The Buddha strives for the welfare of the world. Non-violence is his doctrine. He who has faith in him and follows him always speaks of non-violence, working ever for others' welfare. He attains enlightenment. Being non-violent, he always acts in the virtues where he teaches also his followers to act for the welfare of others. One listening to his words, be one Brahma or Shramana, can never find any harm in this. Such are the maxims of universal virtue. By contrast, religion of Mahadeva is one who is cruel and loves to live in the crematorium, eat flesh and fat and marrow of human body, and by nature violent and revels in killing. His doctrine, being doctrine of violence, is defiled. Even to have faith in it accounts to practice is violence. How can any sensible person have reverence for it? If mere courage is virtue, why are not lions and tigers worshipped? Tranquility of mind alone is virtue. Such was the first sermon given by Venerable Uttara. Thereafter, he delivered another sermon illustrating the difference between virtue and vice in 500 different ways. These two Brahmins also realized the truth of all this and were filled with great reverence to the Tri Ratna, the triple gem. The young Brahmana, Kalyana, the youngest boy, who was already devout, became all the more devoted. Thus, agreeing among these, the three went back to their home and addressed to their mother, all of us have realized the virtue of the Buddha, so each of us want to build a temple for placing the image of the teacher. Show us, mother, to lead for this. Now, this is some people refer to the story of how the Mahabodhi temple was built, yeah? Anyway, when the mother showed them the places, the Brahmana Jaya built a temple in the image of Buddha in Varanasi, at the place of turning the wheel of Dharma. The viharas in which teacher had himself lived, being essentially supernatural phenomena, had to disappear with the withdrawal of the miracle in the eyes of the mortals. However, there was no trace of this because of distraction, devastation, and other causes. The Brahmana Sujaya built a temple in the image of the Buddha in Venuvana. This is in Rajgriha. Kalyana, the youngest brother, built the gondola in Vajrasana with the Mahabodhi in it. So that's according to this story. Kalyana, the youngest son of the mother, built this Mahabodhi stupa. So because when you talk about the importance of Buddhism before Nalanda, we talk about who built what temple, who taught what, who sort of was the contemporary, which king at what place. So once we are able to establish that, then we can fill those gaps. So now this is giving us some kind of understanding that this youngest son called Kalyana was instrumental in building the first gondola. Gondola means monastery in Rajgir, in Bodh Gaya. In Bodh Gaya. Those who built this were celestial architects appearing in human form. At the time of making the image, Brahmin Kalyana and his celestial architects shut themselves within the temple with the materials for making the Mahabodhi. Nobody was permitted to enter in for 7 days. On the 6th day, the mother of the three Brahmin brothers came and knocked at the door. It is now not more than 6 days, and the door can be opened. Only tomorrow morning, they said from the inside of the temple. The mother said, I'm about to die tonight. In the world today, I alone survive who personally have seen the Buddha. So this is talking about she was so old, she's the only one surviving, one who have seen the Buddha. So she really wanted to see the Buddha image finished before she dies. And they meant to finish tomorrow, and she wanted to see it tonight because she'd be dead before seeing that. So this is a real story about the statue in Bodh Gaya. Therefore, others in the future will not be able to determine whether the image is the likeness of the Tathagata or not. So you must open the door for me to see. When she had said that, the door was open. The architects vanished. You mean the sculptures vanished because she is celestial sculpture. Uh, because the boy was so devout, he was assisted by celestial sculptures. The close examination image showed overall likeness of the Buddha. However, there were discrepancy in three aspects. There were no halo radiated from it, because this statue couldn't radiate any halo. It was not preaching the doctrine. Of course, that's the statue is not teaching the doctrine. So those two are acceptable, acceptable discrepancies. Except for sitting, it did not show the three other behaviors. It didn't walk, it didn't lie down, it didn't stand up. So all those three discrepancies are what the statue is statue for. Interesting, yeah. Interesting way how because she couldn't actually see any fault in it. Basically saying I couldn't see any fault. It's perfect. This is why it is generally said that this image resembled the real Buddha. No, that's why these days everybody take a big photo of the Bodhgaya statue, assuming that is the original one. Anyway, since full 7 days could not be devoted to the construction of the image, its iconographical lacuna consisted, according to some, in the toe of the right foot. According to others, it was in the curl of his hair turning towards the right. That's on the forehead. So it appears that these two were later added to the image, because some people think that toe and other things like turf it was added later because mother wanted to see it before this was completed. But it is known that Panditas said that iconographical lacunas consisted of the lack of the hair on the body and the failure to make the robe remains without touching the body. Yeah. So that's an interesting point point about the statue. Anyway, on the same night, a Brahmin Jahasha died without falling ill. That's one of his brothers. Yeah, one of his brothers just died. Soon afterwards, Brahmana Kalyana, that's the youngest one, while traveling, found a self-radiating gem called Ashmagarbha. He thought, had I found this before making the Mahabodhi, it could have been used as the eyeball for the Buddha. But alas, I could not find it then. Immediately there spontaneously appeared holes in the places of the two eyeballs of the image. When he was about to break it into two, there spontaneously appeared another one. These two were grafted in the places of the eyeballs. Similarly, was found another self-radiating gem called Nila. This was placed in between the brows of the image. Till the time of the king Ratika, the interior of temple of Mahabodhi remained illuminated with the rays of these gems during the night. Then the three Brahmana brothers arranged the maintenance of 500 bhikshus, each of these 300 temples. They worshipped the sanghas all around with the necessary provisions. This is the really. There are talk about Nagarjuna build the railings around the stupa and things like that. Yeah, that's right. He only built the railings around the stupa. But who built the stupa? Who built the images of them? These people. So you can see when you piece together, there definitely was. You could see some as important as Buddha passed away. All the activities of guarding his holy sites where he passed away, he taught, he enlightened, will be put great effort, So, of course, this doesn't mean there wasn't anything before that. There definitely would have been other things, but nevertheless, this devout mother, Buddhist mother, was so devout. She wanted to make sure the three brothers put the effort to build the temple. So this according to the this activity of the three Brahmin brothers, particularly the youngest one, Kalyana, building the main gondola and Buddha statue in the at the site where Buddha got enlightened, is less than 100 years after Buddha passed away. Less than 100 years after Buddha passed away. So that is the reign of Venerable Upagupta. What is not covered in this particular section of section of Taranatha history is that Upagupta is actually the Buddhist monk who converted Ashoka into Buddhism. So we must remember that. It is coming later, but here in this book it goes straight to the fifth patriarch, Dittika. So we'll come to that later on, but here let's move on. Arya Upagupta entrusted his teachings to Dittika. That Dittika is the fifth patriarch, Dittika. And the account of Dittika is as follows. In Ujjain is another Indian city in the north. There lived a fabulously rich Brahmin. He had a son named Dittika, who was very intelligent and straightforward. After he completed the study of the 4 Vedas and 18 branches of learning according to the Vedic tradition, his father, being happy, wanted to see him settled and get married. But he said, "I have no desire for a home. Permit me please to get ordained." His father said, "If you are determined to go get ordained, do not do it before I die, and look after these 500 Brahmin attendants." Obeying his father, he lived in a house, a chaste life, teaching the 500 Brahmins the practice of non-violence. So the non-violence was very much part of quite a lot of Brahmin practices. So we shouldn't think that non-violence was taught by Buddha. That it was quite a pre-Buddhist religious, one of the religious practice of non-violence, not killing and vegetarian and all this. Brahmins are pretty pure Brahmins are all for that. After some time, when his father died, he gave away all the properties to the Shamanas and Brahmanas. Along with his 500 Brahmin followers, he assumed the robe of traveling mendicant and went through 16 big cities. There he asked the most famous Tirthikas, Brahmins, about the path of pure moral conduct, but received no satisfactory answer. At last he went to Mathura, that's the city where he approached Arya Upagupta and asked him the same question. From he learned the right answers. He received the great reverence, the ordination from Upagupta. By virtue of Upagupta's 7-fold sermons, those seven-day sermons he gave to convert the Maras, the 500 Brahmins attained Arhathood only within 7 days. Arya Dittika established himself in the Asha Vimokshana Samadhi. It's a very interesting meditative state. He entered in a deep trance as a result of hearing the sermon. He roused great reverence for the Buddha's law among the leading of 500 Brahmins to different levels in the realization. He delivered the sermon to the 4 classes followers in 6 cities. After Aryagupta entrusted him the law, thus spreading the doctrine extensively, he led the living beings to bliss. Once upon a time, there lived in the country called Thogar, a king named Minar. In this country, everybody worshipped the sky god. Besides this, they knew no distinction between virtue and vice. During the festivals, they worshipped the sky god in great smoke by burning grains, clothes, jewels, and fragrant woods. Along with these 500 Arhat followed Aryadittika once flew over the sky, appeared in the place of their worship, and took his seat at the altar there. They took him to be the sky god, bowed down to his feet, and worshipped him elaborately. Then, however, he preached the doctrine about 1,000 people, including the king, were led to realization of the truth. Innumerable people were brought to the path of Sramana Gamana, means they went to refuge. He spent 3 months of the rainy season retreat there. As a result, see, people were desperate. They were praying to the sky, and he appeared in the sky, and they thought he was the sky god, because the sky is emptiness. Remember, because most people believe someone up there is always just praying to somebody they think that there is, but it's good if they can see somebody. So Ditika made appearance as the god and gave him the real teaching, and that's interesting, you know. So in those days, maybe it's due to the ripeness of people's merit that all the arhats were just people were gaining arhathood like within a week, and show miracles like that and so on. Anyway, so he spent 3 months in rainy season there, and this is in Kashmir. As a result, number of bhikshus greatly increased. Even the number of those who attend Arhathu reached about 1,000. Thereafter, the route between this country and Kashmir cleared up, and thus many Staviras Kashmir came to this place, and the law was widely spread. During this time, the king and his son called Imashya, about 50 big monasteries were filled with a large number of sanghas. Also in Kamapura. Kamapura is in Assam, I think. Assam, in the east, it says. It has to be east if it's Assam. There lived a Brahmin named Siddha, who was wealthy as great king, and had thousands of attendants. He used to worship the sun. People were worshippers of sun, in the sun. That's why they use sun disk in Buddhism all the time. So the sun worships are not excluded. Of course, we think the sun is a bodhicitta or something, but the sun worshipper thinks they're sun. Anyway, once while he was worshipping the sun, Aryadittika, by his miracle power, made himself emerge, as it were, from the solar region, solar region, and set in front of him, radiating luster. Taking him to be the sun god, the Siddha bowed to him and worshipped him. Dittika delivered a sermon to him. When the Brahmin was full of reverence, Arya revealed his true self and preached the doctrine over again. The Brahmin realized the truth and with great reverence built a vihara called Mahachaitya. He also lavishly entertained the Sangha all around. Thus the law of Buddha was spread widely in Kamarapura. Kamarapura is, as I mentioned, in Assam. At that time in Malawa in the west, there was a Brahmin named Adarpa who ruled as an uncrowned king. Every day he performed the sacrifice with flesh and blood of 1,000 slaughtered goats and animals. He had also 1,000 altars for sacrifice. All his Brahmin attendants had to perform. See, some Brahmins are performing real sacrifice of animals, in India. And some of the remnants of this practice still exist in Nepal. I don't know whether it exists in India. I think they still do, unfortunately. All his Brahmin attendants had to perform the Ajameda sacrifice according to their own capacities, and all those who were not Brahmins were employed to collect the materials for sacrifice. He once wanted to perform the Gomeda sacrifice, invited Brittu Rakshasa, belonging to the Briddu family, for performing the sacrifice. He collected 10,000 white cows, invited many Brahmins, and arranged everything for sacrifice. So definitely they are not a pure Brahmin. Pure Brahmin wouldn't sacrifice cows. They worship cows. So this is another kind of religious group. Then when he started performing the sacrifice, Aryadittika appeared at the altar. Remember, he liked to become everybody's altar, the sun worshipper, sky worshipper. Now this time he became the altar of those people who wanted to sacrifice the animals. In spite of their best effort, the sacrificial fire could not be kindled, nor could the cows be slaughtered in any way. Everything become impossible to go ahead do what they were doing. And it was even possible to hurt even slightest to the cows. Though the Brahmins tried to recite Vedas and mantras, they could utter no sound. They recite the mantras, they become completely inaudible. So, Bhritu Rakshasa said, this is the real obstacle to the performance of the sacrifice being caused by the influence of this Shramana. Shramana is the Buddhist, They call Shramanas is the monk, Monk. Though everybody drew stones, sticks, dust at him, they saw this being turned into flowers and sandal powder. These made them full of reverence for him. They bowed to his feet and prayed for forgiveness. back to non-violent style, And when you don't retaliate, send radiant loving kindness, then I suppose, if not really flowers, they will all change, isn't it? I think even if you practice that these days, you don't have to show miracles of flowers. People will eventually will come to their senses and gain respect, and that's exactly what this teaching is teaching us. Is what is really miracle is changing people's perception of you, and see qualities that they did not know they need to seek, let alone see in us, but they can then see. That's probably the real flowers. That's the real miracle, mindfulness miracle, compassion miracle. So in this 21st century, even if someone did that, people say he's doing a magical trick, and so what? He's another magician, and with 50,000 people watching him and do a few tricks, but that's not. But real magic is changing people's perception, and then through the practice of non-violence and compassion, no doubt Venerable Dittika was able to do any spectacle if necessary, but he was probably sending loving kindness and compassion and so on. They bowed down to his feet and prayed for his forgiveness. O Arya, what dost thou command? Arya said, listen, O Brahman, what are you going to attain by this sinful and evil sacrifice of helpless animals? Instead of these, offer gifts and strive after virtue. Cows are deities of the Brahmin families. How can it be proper for one who behaves like a human being to kill the gods and the parents? The cow's flesh is always impure, and the Brahmins do not even touch it. It is not an insult to the gods to offer it. O sages, renounce this sinful religion. What are you going to achieve by sacrifice designed for the purpose of eating meat? It is debasing the mantras to feed oneself with the help of black art. In this way, he preached the doctrine elaborately, who were full of remorse because of their sin. Ashamed of their conduct, they hung their heads low and humbly asked how to atone for the sin. As taught by the Arya, all the Brahmins were brought to the path. They built big temples on the ruins of Ramas, householder Goshila, and strove over after the wonderful sevenfold merit. So this is a list of vows. In this way, the law was widely spread in that country. That happened shortly after the birth of King Ashoka. King Ashoka heard this. So in terms of line, because Ashoka has heard about this, after this, Dittika gradually converted about 500 brahmanas into the devotees, into the three ratnas. He looked after the law of the Buddha for a long time, thus caused the welfare of living beings. After that, he entrusted Dittika, which is the fifth apatya, entrusted the teaching to Arya Krishna with the law, and attain nirvana in Ujjain in the Malava country. So when you think of Venerable Dittika, you think of Malava country and Ujjain city. So so we have to fill those gaps. Okay, there's this amazing great being called Venerable Dittika in Ujjain in the Malava county, where he was preaching the Dharma and stopped thousands of people practicing this kind of animal sacrifices and taught them the true Dharma. Of course, he just appeared before people, whoever worshipped, whether sun or sky or whoever. He just appeared before them and then made them to see that someone they thought they were worshipping too. They previously probably they couldn't see nothing. They just think they are there, But he just appeared in front of them because he knew they were visualizing, so he might as well fill the gap. And then taught them the real Dharma. So that's up to Venerable Ditika, the fifth one to the sixth is Krishna. We will go over Krishna later in next session. What we are really talking about here is the time before Nalanda Panditas came. There is these arhats are incredibly showing their qualities through enlightened activities. No doubt they will, as mentioned, they may be showing some miracles, because those days people didn't use their intelligence to discern what way is the truth. They always watch what they saw, and then if they saw somebody can perform miracles, and that people would really follow that. That was the time then. And in any case, also that doesn't mean that magic was only used to convert people and not the logic of the teachings. If the people won't use logic of the teaching, they cannot attain enlightenment. So they have to really, truly distinguish the how true the Dharma is, and then they found refuge in the teachings. But only by themselves finding refuge in the teaching, then believing in it, and then practicing the three training of self-discipline, meditation, and then the wisdom. So it is said that during the early period, there were arhat. They were all arhats, and people were attaining arhathood. We don't hear any stories of arhats in the Mahayana tradition for some reason. We only hear the stories of Panditas, Nalanda Panditas and Mahasiddhas. It's good to hear a story of them, so there's very important. But it's important to hear stories of the arhats, because arhats are the earliest period, and if we forgot the early period story, and without thinking they existed, is to the disadvantage of our historical knowledge. No matter how much we honor the Panditas and and Mahasiddhas, if we don't remember who the arhats were, what legacy of theirs were, who came when, what kind of influence they have, where did they go, who they teach, what are the towns and places, the countries, the cities they influence. So this is very, very important for our own sort of authenticity of the historicity of the lineage, that we need to trace our teaching all the way to the Buddha, not just thinking is the Buddha Dharma, but only talk about Nalanda Panditas. This is mainly caused by Tibetans' laziness to read the Kangyur and thing. Kangyur is the original words of Buddha. They put them in the shrine, that's it, they bow down to. But actual textbooks they study is only textbooks written by Nagarjuna and others later on. Not that there were no other texts before them, but nevertheless, the spoon-fed texts, like texts that are specifically written on middle way, specifically written on Bodhisattva's way of life, specifically written on a special subject, become more like a school textbooks. But actual textbooks, the Shastras, written by Nalanda Pandita, which we are profoundly grateful, because, by the way, these people who wrote these texts themselves are celebrated and prophesied by the Buddha. So they're not unimportant, Nalanda Pandita. They're very important. But important is that it's more important that the gap between Buddha and Nalanda Panditas are not left unfilled historically. So we need to know who existed, what they do until then. If we can piece together all, because that's what Taranatha is trying to do. he actually identified who the 7 first patriarchs are, and which are the kings, and what were their legacy. Then we will appreciate the Theravadan tradition more than we sometimes tend to think we need to, because Theravadan tradition is the tradition that has held they still are aspiring to attain Arhathood. If you ask the Theravadan, they all want to attain Arhathood. They don't just blatantly say, I want to attain enlightenment, perfect enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Probably they will if they can Arhathood. They attain Arhathood. But they all still talk about attain Arhathood. Arhathood is the first state of Buddhahood. Bodhisattvahood is second. And Bodhisattva is the second, And the Samyak Sambuddha is the highest. Of course, Samyak Sambuddha is perfect enlightenment. But we tend to think the attainment of Arhathood is not our aim, because it is attaining Arhathood, saying that nirvana without remainder, that's Arhathood is. So because we almost discourage people seeking attainment of Arhathood without any remainder for oneself, then that means you can't do anything for the sake of sentient beings. Therefore, Mahayana propagate the importance of attaining Bodhisattvahood and Samyak Sambuddha. But that doesn't mean we should not know the historically who were the Arhats that actually existed and came and benefited and still continue to benefit actually between the Buddha and likes of Nagarjuna. So that's why we're going through some of these names and the teachers, names of the teachers, kings, places, and their story. Okay, everyone, thank you very much. Welcome to Thank you, everyone.